All right, our first question will come from Claudia Carrera. Your line is open.
Hi, am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Yes.
Okay, great. So I have one question, but this is my first opportunity to speak to NIH officers, so I have a few things to say en route to my question. So during the conference and today, I heard from NIH staff that ME/CFS is a priority, that we are a family, and that this conference marks a turning point in research. But my understanding is that the NIH has refused to commit the kind of resources, leadership, and focus that this public health crisis requires. And I mean, it's clear to me that those of you involved on the conference and in the working group are working on this very hard, and the conference was great. But to move forward, the existing structure of the NIH for promoting this research is just not working, and the slow sort of wait-and-see plan of like, well, what will come up in the intramural study, that is unacceptable. And I mean, maybe if this disease was new, maybe if it was cropping up in a few dozen people at a time, that would be appropriate, but this has been going on for decades. And over those decades, research has been actively stymied by the NIH. So, and at this point, researchers don't have trust in the traditional granting process. So the NIH really created this mess of how far behind we are with this illness, and so the NIH needs to solve it. I see two major needs. I think there's a fundamental need for a full office of NIH staff members who are devoted to advancing ME/CFS research both intramurally and extramurally. I know all of you are working hard, but it's clear from your positions that ME/CFS is not the first and only priority for any one of you, and that is not acceptable if this is going to be a real priority for the NIH. I mean, Joseph Breen during the conference, towards the end in the Q&A said, oh, if you want to propose a research grant or a clinical study, talk to your program officer. What program officer? There's not even, we're not inside an institute. There's no real full-time program officer, is my understanding, to talk to. So I think we need staff, and I also think we need a major initial funding commitment to make up for the neglect and abuse of past decades. That's on the level of $500 million or more to really get things going. And I've heard you guys say, this is a taxpayer-funded institution. You have to be respectful, but we are the taxpayers. And I'll say that whenever a new taxpayer like me is struck with this illness, we are infuriated to learn of the degree to which the NIH has abdicated its public health responsibility over the past several decades. And I'll say that I think taxpayers don't want extremely rigorous basic science research into the minutiae of well-understood conditions. They want answers for the ones that could happen to anyone at any time and don't have any current treatments. So in that vein, I think the NIH, even though, you talk about how financially strapped you are and how bureaucratically surrounded by red tape you are, you have many options. You can create an office within the director's office like there is for HIV/AIDS. You can fund intramural labs within every single institute. Right now, my understanding is there's one via clinical study out of 20-something institutes with hundreds of labs. You can create a common fund initiative for finding biomarkers for neuroimmune fatiguing conditions, or say for understanding acquired mitochondrial dysfunction, something broad but extremely relevant to ME/CFS and all the other illnesses that do not have answers right now. You can create more collaborative research centers. You can issue specific RFAs. You can amend the guidelines of the open grant system to boost the scores of diseases with unmet burdens. You can contract with advocacy organizations to expand their existing grant programs like the Ramsey Awards, which are seed grants. You can use discretionary funds in the director's office and in every institute. And if that doesn't work, if that is not sufficient, then it's on you to get a larger funding stream from Congress through your budget request. And I saw that Francis Collins just gave testimony for the 2020 budget request on April 2nd, just a week ago. And in that, ME/CFS was not mentioned as a priority. There were many things that, yes, are also priorities, but then he mentioned that he was particularly proud of a dedicated fund he's creating within the Office of the Director of $100 million to support the prioritization of applications from early-stage investigators to support budding scientists in general. Now, why is there not a $100 million Director's Fund to support ME/CFS research? It's clear that you are actively deprioritizing this research. And from funding per disease burden calculations, ME/CFS comes in literally dead last. And so my question is, will you commit to truly accelerating research by hiring full-time ME/CFS-focused staff and identifying one or more major multi-year funding streams before the end of 2019? Or will you continue to put your responsibility on the backs of sick and disabled people with ME/CFS and their caregivers? And I'll just close by saying that you're taking advantage of the fact that most ME/CFS patients are too sick to storm the NIH or to protest in the streets. But we are creative, and we are committed, and we are building our movement, and we're developing alliances with groups like ACT UP, and we will find a way to force your hand if we have to. But please, please, don't be the kind of public institution that forces debilitated people who are poisoned by exertion to sacrifice their health and functioning in order for you to fulfill your own public missions. Thank you.